prenuptial agreement is an agreement that you enter into before a marriage to agree how your assets would be divided in the event that you were to separate. A postnuptial agreement is the same thing, but it's done after the marriage takes place. If you have assets that you want to protect in the event that you do separate, it would be sensible to consider having a prenuptial agreement in place. This is normally particularly relevant if you have one person who has much larger wealth than the other party and wishes to ensure that those assets are protected in the event of a separation. But it can also be helpful for couples who simply want to have clarity as to what happens in the event that they do separate. Both pre- and post-nuptial agreements are entirely voluntary, and that is one of the key aspects of them. Therefore, it is not mandatory to enter into one, but purely something that both parties can choose to if they think it will be of assistance. You also have to bear in mind that if there is any hint that a party has been forced into entering into such an agreement, this can affect how much weight a court will put on it, and therefore you need to make sure that both parties are doing this entirely of their own free will. In England and Wales, pre- and post-nuptial agreements are not currently legally binding. However, they can be very influential on the court's decision about how they distribute the matrimonial assets on a separation. There are a number of factors that the court will take into account when they decide how much influence and weight to put on a pre- or post-nuptial agreement. These are whether the parties had full financial disclosure when they entered into it, whether the parties both took independent legal advice, and whether there was definite signs that there was no duress or undue influence for the parties entering into such agreement. For example, if the parties enter into an agreement too close to the date of the wedding, there can be a suggestion that they feel pressured into doing so in order to preserve that date of the marriage. Although they aren't legally binding, there are a number of reasons to have a pre- or post-nuptial agreement. First of all, the more boxes that you tick in terms of influence means that the court's going to place a greater amount of weight on that prenuptial or postnuptial agreement. Therefore, you can have certainty, whilst it may not be exactly what the court decides, it's going to be very similar to the outcome. It changes the starting point for negotiations and means that overall the costs of your case can be cheaper, and also the timing can be quicker in terms of coming to a settlement.